You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to dive into e-commerce marketing trends for 2024. We've got a longtime friend, partner, supporter of the network, Udayan Bose, over from NetElixir, one of the people in the space that loves data as much as I do, and just spends a lot of time analyzing it and the different trends. He's got a fantastic agency that's out there, and they're literally sitting on the cutting edge. And so I asked him after we're chatting on some of those trends, if he'd jump on and kind of walk through what he's seen from his perspective as a whole. But Udayan, I'll kick it over to you. If you want to do, a brief intro on yourself and NetElixir, that would be awesome. And then I know people want to hear about these trends and what they need to be on the lookout for.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast, Adam. It's really been a pleasure working with you and the BWG group. NetElixir started almost exactly about 20 years back. So we'll be celebrating our 20th birthday as an independent digital marketing agency specializing in e-commerce on the 26th of January. So it has been a fairly long time and a long ride. And it has been fascinating to really be almost like in the front seat, or in many cases, the driver's seat as well, as all of these new trends emerged. So essentially, when we started the company, there was this new company, Aaron, you may have heard of, called Facebook, which had just started from the dorm room of Zuckerberg.
I can't believe you're like almost 20. That's what I can't
almost 20, yes. So Twitter, it was still a sound which the bird made, and obviously there was no Uber and there obviously no DoorDashes and all that stuff. So it's interesting, fascinating, and I really have a bit of a sense of deja vu when I really go into discussing the 2024 trends as such. But we have seen just an absolutely incredible year in 2023, where I think a lot of the unique forces or different forces coincided. The biggest one, as I'm pretty sure all of you are aware of and probably cognizant of, are essentially the generative AI and AI, how it really transformed our worlds. Essentially, AI, just on a very personal basis, forced us to rethink the entire digital marketing agency structure. And we have now worked almost nonstop for 11 months to really transition all of our processes onto generative AI. So literally building an operating system very similar to, let us say, campaign management system, but building our own GPT on top of basically GPT-4. And we also, as Aaron, we have our own Elixir Insights technology, which is the machine learning platform which helps proactively identify the high-value shoppers and target them very precisely with the new forms of Google ads like Performance Max and Meta ads like Facebook Advantage Plus, and drives about 3 to 10 times as much of an ROI as the regular audiences and so on. So it has been a fascinating time transforming the agency, because I firmly believe that the 2019 digital agency model now is obsolete. And I know I'm starting with a very broad and a very big statement out here, but the classical agency model is no longer valid in today's world. And a big chunk is happening because of 3 themes which I wanted to talk about today. The first theme, which I call the mega forces, if you may, the first big theme is understandably last year saw the emergence of ChatGPT and the generative AI. This year, you will saw an unbelievably quick, almost like an explosion of generative AI technologies and platforms. And most importantly, you will saw tremendous amount of gain moving forward in terms of innovation, as well as adaptability, as well as, more importantly, just the widespread usage across. So 2024, I firmly believe, will be the year when chatbots really will become our best friends, probably, or most like co-pilots or co-workers in office. And any company which fails to understand and embrace this unfortunately is at a significant competitive disadvantage. So my first theme essentially is the emergence of chatbots and chatbots effectively becoming the co-pilots. The second theme I talked about actually started already in the first few days of this year, which is the deprecation of the third-party cookie on the Chrome browser and even the Android as well. So if both of you, if you really take combined, I mean, overall Google Chrome accounts for almost 68% of all the browsers. At least in the globally, the number is even higher, but I think that's the number in the US. Now, from that perspective, if you really look at that, the third-party cookie deprecation fundamentally means that the entire advertising or digital marketing landscape will have to be reimagined and rethought. Because suddenly, the cookies cannot be shared and the entire thing has to be rebuilt and reimagined based on the first-party data system. A massive change in itself to really be sort of called out and very specifically to make a massive transitional impact on any business, any industry. And overall, in this case, we are talking about the digital marketing industry as a whole. The third impact, I think, is more of a slightly far-fetched wish or a hope, but I think with my observation over the last 20 years of running this company, where I've been very fortunate to see, analyze, and track how essentially Apple really brings a product to the market, how it scales up, and its entire marketing machine, the engineering machine, the efficiency machine, so as to say. When Apple comes to the market with its own mixed reality headset on the 2nd of Feb, that I feel is going to be another transformative time. Very similar to, I would probably compare this with the launch of iPod many years back, almost like at the time, right before as to when we were starting off as a company. So it's like these three forces. One is the revival or resurgence of the metaverse, if you may. The second one is the chatbots becoming our co-workers. The third component is how to really survive and thrive in the cookieless world, knowing that even at best, probably about 15 to 20% of the marketers are fully prepared for the decline of third-party cookies. Unfortunately, 80% or more are still not prepared for this demise of the third-party cookies and the impact that may be felt right after this. So those are the three themes I want to talk about.
Let's pick them apart one by one. I want to start just because you did around when you're talking about chatbots as a whole, and you're saying, a lot of people think chatbots, they're thinking, hey, it's the help desk that's on the website and uploading there. But I'm sure you agree that, hey, those will be powerful, but it sounds like you're also saying internally companies are going to start utilizing the co-pilots, the chatbots to answer questions, generate data. Like what does that piece look like? Like how are marketers going to be using this?
So I think a lot has been talked about, and there has been a lot of discussion as well as practical usage cases like the chatbots in the call centers, et cetera, et cetera. What I am essentially placing a bet in 2024, Aaron, is chatbot as more of your, helpful concierge or someone who can really take you around and help you get things done. It's almost like the assistive component of the chatbots, whether you are trying to really uncover insights from the research report and generate insights. It's almost like an assistant. Or whether you are trying to do the chatbot-led discovery and shopping. When you really go to the sites, there is a chatbot which greets you and helps you successfully complete your shopping journey, which we think will be extremely big. I myself use ChatGPT to compare prices and compare the product descriptions and make purchases during Black Friday last year. So I know it works extremely well, and I'm pretty sure the development would be significant. There is obviously a big reliance still on the site search on most sites. Chatbots would very clearly go after the site search, because if there is a bot which can really help you, if there's a shopping assistant which can help you, what is the point of having even the site search? So I think the site search as a function probably would go ahead and be sort of morphed into more of through the search agents and the search/shopping agents as such. I also feel this entire personal shopping experience would lead to a different era of personalization as well, Aaron. There is a different age of personalization in the sense the chatbot would know the next time you come back to the site as to what were your browsing preferences and what maybe you be interested in purchasing. And as a result of which, they would really help you get to what you want a lot quicker as well. And I somehow feel that that would be the cutoff that we are looking at in 2024, which leads to the next mega spike in terms of the overall online retail as such as a category, let us say e-commerce retail or e-commerce as a category as such. Prior to this, the mega spike, as we all know, came during COVID, the Q2 of 2020. But I'm talking about a mega spike which would be now led by chatbots as be your personal shopping assistant. So that's something which I'm really extremely bullish on. We started off as a search company and now we have really become more of an AI first digital marketing agency. As we really put all of our processes onto AI and we are seeing the benefits right there as well. And I think Bill Gates wrote about it. And first he talked about it in London in May 2023 as to how the search agents will slowly start replacing the entire act of searching. When you talk about searching, people are really finding something, right? And wouldn't it be cool if there is this personalized search agent which can help you find as to what you are trying to really search for, right? There is this company which just beginning of the year, it sort of attracted some very, very powerful investment from folks like Jeff Bezos, who invested a significant chunk of his own money on this company called Perplexity. Now, Perplexity is more of, they are calling it an ask engine. So think of Ask Jeeves, but a much smarter generative AI driven Ask Jeeves as such. So understandably, it will transform the entire verb as such of searching, and it will probably expand searching into more of a finding, discovering, and asking, right? So I think suddenly we are really looking at expanding the entire search ecosystem, making the entire search process a lot more bi-directional and conversational as well. At this point in time, if you really look at the classic search as we have known from Google or Bing, if you go back to, let us say, even 2020, was you sort of typed in some words, or you probably had a voice assistant which had very limited smarts, and you sort of put it there and it was able to sort of come up with those links and so on and so forth. But now that is going to be changed quite substantially because you have really a hyper personalized search assistant or a search agent which can really help you complete and find what you are looking for a lot quickly as well. Understandably, the search generative experience and Microsoft adding the deep search, both are extremely powerful introductions. When I say Microsoft Bing adding deep search, it can now really get into helping customers get or searchers get answers to very complex questions that don't really have simple answers, which is very difficult for regular search engines or search function to do. So the second part is that,
So, really quick, so the functionality is there. Is it now just there's an adoption issue there on two sides, right? We have to get general consumers comfortable with it and what's going on and having that adoption rate. But also what you're talking about is the fundamental change of digital marketing, e-commerce marketing as a whole, of how you're approaching it and the tools that you are using.
Right.
And that is now going beyond just the ads and the ad tech, which I think is another whole piece in the ad tech. But we're talking about fundamentally changing how we're marketing products on the site, like you're saying.
Right.
Why do a search when I can get an answer, right? That's the old adage, right? That Google is a search engine, ChatGPT is an answer engine.
Exactly. So I think just think of it, I think the best way of thinking of it, any particular product was launched to really address a particular verb to an extent, something that the customer wanted to do. So it's a very clearly addressing a do. The do in Google's case is this act of searching. Now that verb essentially is now substantially getting expanded because now the customer really wants to discover, compare, ask, and all of this can be done very effectively by a generative AI-led chatbot, right? Which we call the search agent. And that's the powerful part. And Google is starting to roll out the search generative experiences. So even the Google page would look very different. I mean, those of you use Bing already know that the Bing page look is extremely different compared to as to how it looked just a few months back. And last but not the least, these are extremely powerful. Like Microsoft essentially last about 2 months back, I believe, 2 months back, they launched something called Deep Search, which is more of a new optional generative AI feature meant to help searchers with complex questions that don't really have simple answers. Now, that is like having a conversation with an expert as such, right? So it's extremely deep in terms of the meaning, the value it adds. Most importantly, simplifying anyone's life rather than them have to really painstakingly go through clicking on different links, just going in. And
How,
this, yeah, I'm sorry.
you don't know, when does it become like verbally conversational? Because we talk about conversational AI, but we're still sitting typity type back and forth. We don't
It has
have
already
to be
started.
anymore, right?
It
Like,
already started, and I think I am actually placing a bet by the end of 2024. I wouldn't be surprised if we see either high single digit or low double digit percentage of searches happening, just conversations or voice activated, right? And those are big numbers because those numbers are not even a percentage now. I'm talking about a massive increase for exactly the same reason because the complex search queries now can be answered. And effectively, there is no reason why they cannot be answered if I ask a question. It's almost like, as I mentioned, I talked to an extremely knowledgeable person called Aaron. Instead of Aaron, I'm talking to an extremely knowledgeable person called whatever, the chatbot XYZ. So that's how it is going in. And it is leading also to another very important component. The overall core search market is increasing quite substantially. Core search market includes your web search, so the classic Google search, plus the generative AI search, which you can call the conversational search or whatever, the chatbot-led search, and so on and so forth. And that is exploding substantially as well. So those are the things which are all in play. So as you can understand, when the verb itself gets changed or potentially will get changed, understandably, everything changes from how the marketing should be done, redefining the rules of marketing, what are the tools, how should the tools adapt, and so on. Right. And that's where I think generative AI, we are very confident will enter the phase 2.0 in 2024. And it will enter phase 2.2 in terms of innovation. So you would see a lot of emphasis and a lot of products coming out which really simplify this entire personal shopping agent, search agent sort of a concept. A hyper personalized personalization would be a big focus. An assistive part would be a big focus. Application would be a big focus. All of these different areas where it can be applied. And most importantly, it would be everywhere, right? So the companies which are not using the chatbot as their co-pilots will be at a competitive disadvantage, significant disadvantage. And that's where I think it's a very fascinating year because last year was the time when it was introduced, but this year would be the time when it transforms our worlds completely.
I totally agree. I'm just sitting there rolling through it in my head that if you're not staying on top of this, your website, your web experience will be so painful because if you're not plugging these in, it will be so painful. It will just be left behind. It's like you're offering CDs instead of streaming music.
Exactly. And the only difference, as we know, on the technology adoption, you talked about the CDs and the streaming part. As you know, technologies like this, the disruptive technologies follow an exponential curve, right? So every month is equivalent to almost like a year worth of falling behind. So every month you delay, essentially you are sort of behind from the competition, which is adopted it by a year, right? So think of it. I mean, 12 months, if you are late, that means essentially you are late by 12 years. So that's, I think, the part which most people do not really understand. And a simple example why I say that they don't understand is this entire understanding of this privacy first advertising, which is in the new cookieless world as such.
Which is number two, right?
Which is number two, essentially. Exactly.
I love how these blend together. Yes.
Right. So this is, I think, the segue into this part as well, because there was this article which came out in Search Engine Journal, just I think in December, where most marketers are still not ready for the death of third-party cookies. And in fact, just about 3 days back, a very similar article came out. It was published on the Wall Street Journal, I think, on the 6th of this month, 6th of Jan, which exactly talked about the same thing. And that's a big concern, right? Because Google will disable 1% of the Chrome users almost immediately. And by the end of the year, they are really looking at completely phasing out the third-party cookies. Everything would change. I mean, everything essentially that we are talking about change. And Google and Facebook or Meta has been already taking steps. For example, I think a lot of people, a lot of companies have struggled to adapt essentially and succeed in the new AI-based modules like Performance Max in Google Apps or Facebook Advantage Plus in Meta, and so on and so forth, right? And just because it's a black box. So that's where I think adapting to this new world becomes extremely critical. And on the same lines, I think we very clearly believe now you will see as to each channel really work at a very intense pace to try to safeguard their walled gardens. But I mean, walled gardens are getting built anyway, right, with the deprecation of cookie. Now, let me sort of put the biggest walls I can around the walled gardens, right, so that my competition cannot really scale those walls. So just think of the internet as an open space, all perpetually connected. That goes off, and suddenly it is replaced by, let us say, a set of cubicles all disconnected, and the entire ecosystem is filled with those cubicles or those boxes or those gardens, as you can say, right? And one of the areas which really has had some significant success over the last about, I would think specifically about 3 years, let us say COVID times and so on, has been the retail media network space, which we saw a massive boom coming in. And I mean, the fact remains that Amazon still accounts for 75% of the entire retail media network spend. But I think it's a lucrative proposition because, I mean, it's a walled garden concept, right? And specifically for companies, as our good friend Andrew Lipsman from eMarketer talks about it. I mean, it's essentially the companies with stores as well. There is a great way to connect the in-store presence and the online presence and build your own walled garden. The struggle is that it is still extremely skewed. If you really look at overall the ad spend, which is going behind retail media networks, Amazon accounts for 75% per eMarketer insider intelligence. And the balance really sort of is shared by the next four retail media networks, which is Walmart, Kroger, Target, and eBay.
You know, right? It's really funny too. Just the podcast episode before this one with airing takes place. It's actually with Microsoft Retail Media Network.
Okay. Yeah.
They're jumping in through an acquisition all in. And it's a super interesting episode. With Nate Pinkston and Paul Brenner from Vibenomics about what they're trying to do in the space. So I totally agree with you. It's so big and it's so lucrative. I mean, Microsoft's like, we're in.
Yeah. So that's where I think we'll see a fair amount of consolidation also this year, because McKinsey had produced this very interesting study, which is called the 6 Secrets of Unleashing the Power of Retail Media. I mean, it was published mid of last year. And it talked about providing differentiated value is a must. And a lot of the smaller retail media networks which have just started, they are struggling in terms of delivering performance, right? For example, delivering ROAS, delivering traffic, audiences, unique audiences, et cetera, et cetera. So again, what you would see is, as you mentioned about Microsoft jumping into with the retail media networks, I expect Google to do the same thing as well. I mean, Google has tried to do the Google Shop earlier as well, right? TikTok, you have already seen jumping into the TikTok shops. So theoretically, every walled garden will try to monetize the people while they are there within that walled garden as well. Also, let us not really forget the importance of potentially Instacart, DoorDash, and Grubhub also making a play, because these guys are growing as a retail media network. And I mean, Instacart, as I think all of you probably know, is led by Fidji Simo, who comes from a very strong Meta advertising background, right? She was a leader at Meta Ads. She's a CEO, and she's an extremely smart woman. And understandably, she has made her intention very clear that Instacart will be a player in terms of grabbing these ad dollars. So it will be an extremely interesting year for retail media networks, because there would be 3 key forces which would be at play in the retail media networks. One, I think all the walled gardens will try to really monetize the audiences while they have it, right? Before the audience leaves, right? So essentially, that you talked about the Microsoft sort of jumping in, Instacart jumping in, again, the same situation. The second part is the viability of a network, specifically for smaller networks as such, will be significantly questioned, right? So can the networks provide you scale? Can they provide you that profitability, ROAS, et cetera? Big question there. So I think we would see some of the networks probably phase out, and a bit of a consolidation will happen in the industry. The third component is, which I am very excited about, Andrew, and I don't know as to Aaron, as to what is the situation in this one. I would be very interested in understanding, because I think yesterday at CES, Amazon already announced a massive amount of focus in terms of doing generative AI in everything, right? So what if in the retail media networks component, you use the entire search and shop agent, a personalized search and shop agent? So literally you have a sales guy who's in a very non-intrusive manner trying to really take you through this entire experience as such, thereby improving the conversion rates of the retail media network significantly. So these are the three factors I think we have to keep in mind very clearly when it comes to retail media network. But I firmly feel that 2024 will see an incredible amount of activity in this particular area as such.
Yeah. I mean, I know, and I brought us up on a couple other podcasts as well. When you're talking about, there's two sides to it. There's the personal assistant that's walking you through, but there's also on the back end, the AI and the generative AI that's creating ads, placing the ads, changing the bids, putting in front of the right, person, personalization. I mean, when those two things are working together, we're going to see a phenomenal shift in the way, people are marketed to and how they buy and purchase.
Absolutely.
A year from now, it's going to be crazy, because we just think about how far ChatGPT just came in a year.
Oh, yeah.
When I think at the beginning, everybody thought it was kind of like the metaverse.
Yeah.
Right. Which is kind of a good transition to the next one. Originally, the metaverse blows onto the scene, and people are looking at it from the standpoint of, hey, it's kind of gone. It was never gone.
It was never gone.
It's been trumped by, generative AI and all these AI trends, but the metaverse is still
never went anywhere. Exactly. And that was my next point about the revival of metaverse, right? So I think if you really look at Apple, there are two ways of looking at Apple. One is as the innovation company, but I prefer to look at Apple more as an engineering company. And if you look at engineering company, one of the things Apple is really good at, probably the best in the world, is they are a tremendous follower. They are a good leader, but they're a tremendous follower company. Because whatever the innovator or the first mover has done, they do significantly better than that. And Apple's new mixed reality headset, which starts getting available in the US starting Feb 2nd, I feel will really usher in and again revive this entire interest in metaverse as such. And it sort of coincides very well with all of these things, right? The cookieless world and all of these things that are going on, because we are talking about building walled gardens. So building walled gardens not only in the digital space, but also metaverse as well. So we will see a resurgence, I am very confident, despite the prohibitive price of the headset of about $34.99 or something, $3,500, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one player which I wanted to connect as well in all of this stuff, and it's a bit of a segue into this as well. Meta earlier in 2023 made a very important announcement very quietly. So in the US, they launched something called an advanced conversational assistant that's available on WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram, and is coming to Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses and Quest 3, right? So Meta was already thinking of this, right? Already thinking of it and working on it. So Meta AI can give you real-time information and generate photorealistic images from your text prompts in seconds to share with friends. So think of as to, again, building an entire ecosystem powered by generative AI and Meta. So just imagine the power of Gen AI meets metaverse. It's just going to be huge, massive, right? Because it will really take the hyper personalization not only in the digital world, but to the metaverse in a massive way. And one player which we very firmly feel is extremely well placed, Aaron, to really take advantage of all of this is basically the TikTok. TikTok shops has been gaining in popularity. And I think we already know that it is literally has a stranglehold on the Gen Z and to an extent the millennials as well. And both of these factors, like the generative AI application, as well as the entire would really lead to a boom in social commerce moving forward as such. So that's what we are betting on as well. So I think the powerful thought which I really would want to leave you with, what happens when generative AI really meets metaverse? So those are, I think, some of the trends. And I mean, it's just
But that's,
a
I mean,
lot.
wasn't the drawback with the metaverse that it was too unrealistic almost,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
right? For it to be truly interactive. I know there's the gamer aspect, right?
Yeah.
And, a Roblox or a Fortnite, but for general adoption, it was kind of that it's not quite real. I know I'm totally in a game,
Right.
or it feels that way.
Yeah.
And so we had to have this point in time where you could have interactions with something that's nearly realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. So in this case, I think there are two things which have happened, right? One, obviously, Gen Z's buying clout has significantly increased in the last about 18 months when metaverse used to be a talked about theme. The second part is Gen Z is very comfortable. I mean, even I would actually be very interested, and I'm really tracking Roblox very, very, very closely because I want to see. I think there is a big, big metaverse play that they'll make sometime this year as well. And using generative AI just makes it hyper personalized. The point is, I think if you really look at any technology for it to succeed, it really has to fit into my life. And unfortunately, not everyone is a gamer, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, not everyone is a gamer. So it didn't really fit in most people's lives. But I think there will be a time or will be an inflection point where it fits into people's lives. And that would be the tipping point when things really sort of, again, take that exponential curve as such. And I firmly believe that Gen AI will help identify and create that point as well. So it's a very fascinating juncture, Aaron. But I would be very bullish in terms of as to what happens as such. But as you can see, there is a lot to unpack, right? There is a lot of changes, and these changes, as I mentioned, that's the reason I talk about the major themes or whatever it is for this year, right? These are mega themes. These are mega moments for the entire digital world as such. And one of the things that we are seeing is most of the marketers, if not all of the marketers, are struggling big time because it's a new concept. If you really look at an e-commerce company, they are struggling to even match up to all of these demand and comprehend. There is no prior specialization which will help because all of this is brand new. So you don't really have people who are experts in metaverse or experts in Gen AI that you can step in. Everyone is learning and sort of has that the winning mindset and the growth mindset essentially. So we are at NetElixir placing our bet in becoming the AI first digital agency. We will see in 2024 the emergence of what I call the digital first or AI first digital agency. And at NetElixir, that's what our entire mission is. How can we help bridge this gap, which has been created by this astronomical power of Gen AI plus all of these new technologies, the cookieless world, et cetera, et cetera? And how can we really help marketers bridge this gap? Because you're right, if the marketers fall behind, there is no way for them to catch up ever. Understandably, that poses a significant competitive disadvantage for the businesses. So that's where I think the emergence of AI first digital agency is what NetElixir, as the CEO of NetElixir and the founder of the company, I am really placing all the bets on. And we
It
have been
has
working
to
extremely
happen.
hard.
I mean,
Has to happen.
the issue, that marketers have, especially digital marketers, is there weren't enough of them
Yeah.
around when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then once we started to try to train some, everything's moving so fast, nobody can stay on top of it. And what they're really looking for is there's so many things going on and it's all changing so fast.
Yeah.
Is that partner in the space,
Yeah.
somebody to hold their hand and say,
Yeah.
hey, we're going in the right direction, right? It's all foggy right now, but we've been here 18 other times. We know where we're
Right.
going.
Exactly.
And
And who really
that's
has the technology and the AI capability to back up as well. telling the struggles that is that there are a lot of companies. I think AI first is a very loosely used word, right? Because you slap a skin on maybe a basic application on chat GPT and really claim that you are AI first. We have invested 7 years in our product innovation lab to build only 4 proprietary predictive analytics or machine learning driven models. And so 7 years to develop only 4 models, right? And this works entirely on first party data. And I find it so intriguing that companies just by slapping something on chat GPT and packing it up in a different way are claiming to be AI first. That's what my struggle is. There would be a lot of almost like a noise around the area. But I think that's where it's important because the noise is not really going to help anyone, not the marketers, because they'll sort of fall for it, unfortunately. And they'll essentially pay a price when they find out that this like chat GPT looking better or more beautiful or aesthetically more appealing, and that this company that they are working with, the partner they're working with, does not really have their own machine learning algorithms and technology. And that's what I really wanted to emphasize, that anyone to even claim AI first digital agency needs to have invested that much amount of time, effort, resources, money over a significant amount of time to really work on this and build their own platform as such, or a machine learning platform. And that's where at NetElixir, we feel that we really have a significant advantage of making this claim of being the first AI first digital agency of 2024, which can help marketers bridge the gap between what is possible and what is happening in the future and what currently is their state is. So that's where I think we become more of a connecting AI first agency, just because of as to how we have structured ourselves. Because the classical model is, honestly speaking, my friend, dead.
Yeah. So I've been picking your brain. I always like to give people opportunity, like what's top of mind for you? Any questions I can answer for you?
For me, Aaron, specifically, or?
Yeah, I mean, do you have any questions for me? I always like to throw it back there after I pick your brain for 40 minutes.
A couple of things which I am definitely interested, because you work with a wide range of brands and you work with a wide range of providers as well, right? And one of the things that we have been championing a lot at our company is the importance of this growth mindset, right? It has become a cliche in certain cases. Unfortunately, it is not. And the growth mindset is becoming more and more important. My question to you is, working with so many brands and marketers, how well do you think the brands as well as the agencies or solution providers are really coping up with this change? I mean, do they have that growth mindset or an organizational growth mindset?
Well, right now, everything's so weird with the economy that people don't know what to do. And this is good and this is bad. It's bad from the mindset of, hey, what do our budgets look like for 2024? And what should we commit to? The good part is things have slowed down a little bit where people can pop their head up. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think growth right now is actually second to profitability. Mm-hmm. And I think growth is what's going to happen on the back half of the year. So right now, there's a ton of agency rationalization, right? Mm-hmm. You signed up for somebody and you realize they're not quite as good as you thought, but they were the right choice at the right time because you were flying so fast. Mm-hmm. And now you're realizing, like, wait a minute, I've got competition that's passing me. So there's tech stack rationalization. What do I really need? Mm-hmm. And then there's overall rationalization around the headcount that you have internally, and is it working or not? And that's all being governed by profitability as a whole. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be figured out in the next 3 to 4 months. I think I have a lot of conversations right now around, hiring the right people. I have a lot of conversations around who's the right tech partners and what does my tech stack look like, even to am I on the right platform? And then, hey, I want to reevaluate my agency because I think I'm overpaying. So that's the whole profitability piece that I think will be figured out by the end of Q1. Mm-hmm. Then I think what you're talking about is the growth mindset is the strategy mindset. Mm-hmm. What am I doing to win? And strategically, how am I looking out? Because I've been playing catch up for the past 3.5, 4 years. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, isn't that weird that the pandemic started almost 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
and yet still has these lasting implications 4 years later. Like, I don't know where the time went, but there is now this time where it's strategically like, I don't have to be completely reactive to everything that's taken place. I can now be proactive and plan. And that's an exciting spot to be. Yeah, I mean, 2024 might be down a little bit. But if you can be down a little bit, but more profitable, and you can feel like you have a better hold on your business as a whole and what you're tasked with doing and growing. And let's be real, without these AI tools, nobody can keep up with the pace of change. Nobody is going to be able to create enough content. Nobody's going to be able to change bids fast enough, target the right demographics, have the right personalization, optimize it all, answer the right questions, customer service. Without this, nobody can keep up with it.
Exactly.
So we need tools because of the AI acceleration. We need AI tools to keep up with itself because we can't.
Right. I think at the end of it also, what we are seeing very clearly, Aaron, I think there are two parts which I really wanted to emphasize. The first part is the importance of getting into what I call the future casting, right? Everyone, I think, finds it very easy to talk about what is happening now, right? We don't spend as much time talking about as to what is possible, right? What does the future look like? And as a result of which, in many times, we are not prepared for the future, right? And we just sort of waddle into it as if essentially it was the same as the current. The challenge in this case is the future looks very different from what the present looks like. And unless and until you actively spend some time thinking about the future, there is no way for you to waddle into it because you will probably stumble and fall. And that's what I sort of am seeing very clearly is a challenge, because we are this entire concept, which is called the pod snappery, right? Just thinking of like within the well, I think is probably can be a big distraction, because you're almost like really looking at, this is my world, this is how it is, and this is how it will be tomorrow. But tomorrow's world, my friend, is going to be very different from how today's world is. Look at as to how today's world is very different from exactly a year back, right? 10th of Jan 2023, just compare that. So I think that's where it's important for companies to engage in a little bit of what I call the future casting, thinking about the future, and not only internally, but I mean, we are more than happy as experts to help. We have been invited across by different companies, our clients like Amica and so on and so forth. We're talking to their CEOs, etc., just trying to think of the possibilities in the future as well, so that at least it's there in the mind, right? Do they have to essentially act on everything? Probably no, immediately. They may not really even have the plan for everything, but at least sort of knowing as to what may be coming. So we don't deal as much with maybes and possibilities as we are really entirely focused on what is happening now and really fixing those fires now. So I think that would be a message for the entire audience that you have. Essentially, I think companies should actively, in a disciplined manner, spend at least an hour a week. Doesn't really take much, right? Where I think they sort of get in folks who just talk about as to what is possible.
Awesome. Well, we're getting right here to the end of time. Dan, thanks so much. You're so important to the network. The educational, informational aspect, and just, I don't know, it's fantastic. Super honored to have you part of it, and love the fact that you'll jump on and just knowledge share across the board. Any last thoughts here as we wrap up?
I think, I mean, as probably so I remain a big fan of Steve Jobs. So I'll sort of end with that same line. This is the time where I think that entire thing with Jobs mentioned, right? Stay hungry, stay foolish. I don't think there has been a better time than this to really start a new year with. That stay hungry and stay foolish, and just think of the future a little bit and add it to as a part of your disciplined day-to-day routine as well, because the future will look very different from what the present looks like.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, my friend. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.